19 to 25 and Government New Clause 32. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Government has tabled 8 new clauses to the bill, the majority of which are in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And if I may, I'd like to start by offering honourable members an explanation as to why these amendments are being brought forward at report stage of the bill. The Government's been working very hard, as the House will know, to combat the pandemic, and these measures are just a small part of a much more extensive and wide-ranging response to it. I'm sure that colleagues across the House will appreciate the rather extraordinary circumstances in which both ministers and civil servants have been working over the past 3 months, and as I often do, I would again pay great tribute to officials both at the Treasury and at HMRC. Without their work, it would not have been possible to deliver many, if any, of these aspects of this extremely comprehensive response, let alone in such a rapid time frame as, for example, with the coronavirus job retention scheme. But we've brought forward the legislation for these new clauses at the earliest possible opportunity during the Finance Bill, and for technical reasons it is therefore at this report stage. We've also been slightly limited by the fact that to table each new clause requires a new Ways and Means resolution to be agreed by the House. Report stage was the first amendable stage of this bill to take place after the Government had been able to agree the necessary Ways and Means resolution on the floor of the House. I hope the House will agree there's a clear need for each of these new clauses to stand part of the bill. I will touch on each of the clauses briefly, if I may. Let me begin with New Clause 19, which seeks to do 2 things. First, to confirm that grants made under COVID-related schemes, such as the furlough scheme, the self-employment scheme, the small business grant fund, the retail hospitality and leisure grant fund, local authority discretionary grant fund, and schemes corresponding to those grants within the devolved administrations are subject to tax. The clause also includes delegated power in order to add or remove further grant schemes through a statutory instrument, and that provides sensible flexibility so that the Government can continue to support the economy through its response to the pandemic. The second part ensures that HMRC have appropriate and proportionate compliance and enforcement powers in relation to the furlough scheme and the self-employment income support scheme. To ensure that taxpayer money is going only to those who are eligible, the clause gives HMRC powers to recover overpayments and, where there is deliberate non-compliance, to impose penalties. HMRC have given a clear undertaking that these powers will not be used to penalise taxpayers who may be going through difficult times but make honest mistakes in their applications. As previously stated, the powers are designed to be proportionate, and they balance the fact that we're in unprecedented and uncertain times with the need to ensure that HMRC have sufficient powers to enforce the schemes according to eligibility criteria set out and to protect the exchequer. Madam Deputy Speaker, New Clause 20 seeks to mitigate potential pensions impacts for those with the protected pension age returning to work so as to help in the battle against the pandemic. Its purpose is to provide certainty for these people by temporarily suspending rules that would otherwise see the pension income of recent retired people reduced if they were to return to work in crucial workforces at this important time. In order to help those workforces, these retirees have been and will remain critical to the Government's response to COVID, and this clause temporarily removes restrictions that might impede a flexible response. New Clause 21, Madam Deputy Speaker, temporarily relaxed the statutory residence test so that highly skilled individuals from across the world were not discouraged from coming to the UK and helping this country to respond to the unprecedented health emergency. The actions and presence of normally non-resident individuals in the UK could have inadvertently affected their tax residence status. This is to restrict it, however, to make sure that it only applies between the March the 1st and June the 1st of 2020 for time spent in the UK by individuals who worked specifically on coronavirus disease-related activities in specified sectors. And it means that the statutory residence test will not count towards that time will not count towards the residence test. New Clause 22, and here I come to the clause much loved by my absent friend, the member for Thurston Moulton, modifies the current enterprise investment scheme and seed enterprise investment scheme so that individuals who have made EIS or SEIS investments before a future fund investment in the same company will not lose relief on those previous investments when the future fund loan converts into shares or is repaid. As the House will know, these schemes are intended to encourage investment in smaller, higher-risk trading companies by offering tax reliefs to individual investors who subscribe for new shares in qualifying companies. The government announced the Future Fund as part of its business package in response to COVID-19. Current EIS and SEIS legislation means that some future fund investors who've used those schemes for previous investments in the same company might potentially lose their reliefs depending on how and when the loan converts. This clause is intended to ensure that these investors do not lose that relief as a result of investing in the future fund to support innovative UK companies that may have difficulty raising finance during this period. Yes, of course.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I'm very grateful for the Minister for giving way on that point. I wonder if I could press him on the issue of innovative companies having a lack of support from HMRC. I've come across a case in my constituency where a very innovative British company appears to have had a lack of support from the agency. Would he perhaps look into this matter for me?
Well, I'm very grateful to the Honourable Gentleman for his question, and as the House will be aware, HMRC is actually often and generally extremely responsive to these issues. I will very happily look at any correspondence he wants to send me, and I will make sure that there is a properly engaged response to the extent that my limited powers over HMRC permit me to do, but I hope that will be effective. Madam Deputy Speaker, New Clause 23 enables the Treasury to specify in an order made under Section 135 of the Finance Act 2008 which payments of tax and other liabilities will not attract late payment interest or surcharge as a result of being deferred by agreement during a period of national disaster or emergency. It also enables the Treasury to set specific relief periods for different deferred taxes or liabilities. As the House will know, government's announced an unprecedented package of economic support for businesses and individuals affected by COVID. The new clause ensures that late payment interest, which would normally accrue automatically where tax is paid late, does not apply, supporting taxpayers further and in ways which I'm sure the whole House would support. The payment deferral for VAT, which we've announced, provides taxpayers themselves with a much-needed cash flow boost, and HM Revenue and Customs are using their existing powers as set out in the Commissioners for Revenue and Customs Act 2005 to defer those payments of tax. New Clause 24 allows a refund of the additional 3% higher rate of stamp duty where exceptional circumstances prevented the sale of the previous main residence during a 3-year window within which a sale must ordinarily take place. The new clause applies to those whose refund window ended on or after the 1st of January 2020. It ensures that responsible actions taken by people do not lead to negative tax implications, and that those who would otherwise have received an SDLT refund are still able to receive one despite the pandemic. New Clause 25 suspends the HGV road user levy for a period of 12 months, cutting fixed operational costs to the logistics and haulage industries as the economy begins to recover from the pandemic. These industries support many other industries, and temporarily easing their financial burden will support the haulage sector, reducing fixed costs as the economy recovers over time. Finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, I turn to New Clause 32. New Clause 32 makes a minor change to the existing enterprise management incentives legislation. It introduced a time-limited exception to the disqualifying event rule so that EMI option holders who can no longer meet the EMI working time requirement owing to the pandemic are not forced to forfeit their options or to exercise them earlier than planned. This has the effect of protecting employees furloughed under the Coronavirus Job Retention Scheme or who've taken unpaid leave and had their working hours reduced. The measure means that affected employees will not forfeit their options or be forced to exercise them within the statutory 90 days normally required. Since the point of EMI schemes is to help high-growth, small and medium-sized enterprise recruit and retain skilled employees by giving them tax advantage share options, I'm sure the House will understand that this supports a very important sector and one that is likely to be important also to our recovery. The changes will be effective from the 19th of March in order to ensure that employees who are furloughed or had to reduce their hours do not lose out. Madam Deputy Speaker, I hope the House will accept the need for these new clauses in these highly uncertain and unusual times, and I commend them to the House.